Google Stadia is set to launch on November 19th, 2019. And for those who don't know what Stadia is, it is essentially the company's new streaming platform that will allow customers to stream games rather than play them on a physical hardware. And that's supposed to allow people to overcome the limitations of hardware requirements. But there are a lot of questions and there are a lot of concerns. Obviously, internet data caps are a big concern. We don't know yet how well Stadia works in regular households, whether the streaming itself will hold up, whether the visuals will look good enough, whether the input lag will be mitigated by a significant amount. But even beyond all that, now I am seriously worried about Stadia given the launch lineup and the fact that it's going to be missing a lot of features at launch, as recently reported. So let's start with the launch lineup, which is truly god-awful. So this information was reported by news outlet Ars Technica. And the headline itself is already pretty disconcerting. Only 12 games will be available on Google Stadia in time for November 19th launch. Scrolling down here is a list of those games, and I mean, these games are just of little interest at this point. So the list for November 19th reads as follows: Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Destiny 2 The Collection included with Stadia Pro subscription, Guilt, Just Dance 2020, Kine, Mortal Kombat 11, Red Dead Redemption 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Samurai Showdown, Shadow of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, Thumper, and Tomb Raider Definitive Edition. So these are all old games, you'll have noticed. These games have been out since 2019 or 2018. These are games that you can already get on other platforms or via other services. And because these games have been out for a while, they're on sale on a number of retailers and platforms. But on Stadia, they're going to cost $60. One of the big sticking points for Google Stadia is that it's not the Netflix of games. It isn't like Xbox Game Pass where you pay a reasonable monthly fee and then you get a whole library of games. No, with Stadia, you're only paying for the allure of streaming, I suppose, but the games that you purchase for the platform, you purchase individually at full price. And then to make this situation worse is the fact that for $60, you're not even getting to own these games. You're simply getting access to Google servers, access to the game so that you can stream the game. You're not getting a disc, you're not getting a digital download. For $60, you're not only overpaying for these old games, you're also simply getting less for what you'd get if you use that money to pay for these games on other existing platforms. So all around, it's a bad launch lineup with just a horrible value behind it. There's only one Stadia exclusive here, and that's Guilt. And this is sort of this pretty neat-looking indie game. Not to insult its merits or anything, but it's certainly no console seller. It's not a platform seller. People are not going to line up to get Stadia to play Guilt, as neat as it looks as an indie title. Everything else we have seen before, we have played before. There's no hype for any of these games because everyone's pretty much already played them. And they've played them on platforms that allow you to actually have these games, to tangibly download them or physically own the disc. So if you lose internet connection, with other platforms, there's still a way to play them. With Stadia, not so much. Now, we are seeing more games eventually make their way to Stadia by the end of 2019, and they include Attack on Titan 2, Final Battle, Borderlands 3, Darksiders Genesis, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, Farming Simulator 19, Final Fantasy 15, Football Manager 2020, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Grid, Metro Exodus, NBA 2K20, Rage 2, Trials Rising, and finally Wolfenstein Youngblood. Once again, games that we have already seen or games that are coming out on other platforms. And then here we have games that are coming out after 2019, but within Stadia's launch window. The Crew 2, Destroy All Humans, Doom 2016, The Elder Scrolls Online, Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, Superhot, Windjammers 2. A platform will only sell if there's compelling software to look forward to. And currently there is none of that within Stadia's launch window. And then finally, this article lists a couple of upcoming games that are not released yet, like Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Doom Eternal. And these are obviously coming out on other platforms as well. And then we have Get Packed, a Stadia exclusive, and then Orcs Must Die 3, a timed Stadia exclusive. But as if the awful Google Stadia launch lineup wasn't bad enough, let's now talk about this Reddit AMA, which the Stadia team engaged in with the Stadia subreddit. A lot of information came out of this. Largely, what features won't be available on Stadia at launch, and there's some significant stuff here that's worth pointing out. So here's an article by news outlet Kotaku that compiled all of the missing features for Stadia for launch. Some of this stuff is pretty significant. So let's begin with this bullet point: Stream Connect, State Share, and Crowd Play. The main features that allow players to join in one another's games and make Stadia more than just glorified remote play. On that front, Andrei Doronichev said, "I expect the first game with Stream Connect to launch by the end of the year." And then he also added, the games that support State Share and Crowd Play will be released next year. So these cool features that Google promoted during their press conferences and all that, they are not even ready for launch. There's maybe one game that will launch with Stream Connect by the end of the year, but everything else, we'll have to wait a couple more months. So right from the get-go, a huge blow for the Stadia platform, which is supposed to offer a unique way to interact and connect with games via streaming. But right now, as Kotaku aptly pointed out, it is a glorified remote play. Stadia's achievement system. The service will still record when you hit various milestones in games, but you won't actually get notifications for them or see them displayed anywhere until shortly after launch. So the fact that they can't provide a window is already disconcerting. What does shortly after launch mean? Is it a couple months? Is it a couple days, a couple weeks, a year? Hard to say for sure, but it's certainly bizarre that they are keeping track of the achievements, but don't have the UI elements ready to display the achievements. Okay. Next up, the ability to use existing Chromecast Ultras to play games. That will not be at launch either. Kotaku added, at launch, only the Chromecast Ultras that shipped with Stadia controllers will have the updated firmware required to stream games. And then Doronichev said in the AMA, quote, we will be updating the existing Chromecast Ultras over the air soon after launch. So if you already own a Chromecast Ultra, you're out of luck until, again, shortly after launch, soon after launch, whatever that means. So one of the big features of Stadia is that you're able to stream games from any device. But not only at launch are most platforms unavailable to connect with Stadia, now we're learning that the core Google device that's supposed to allow people to connect with Stadia, Chromecast Ultras, most of the ones that are out there right now, they're useless anyway. Next up, we have family sharing won't be available at launch. Quote, while parents will be able to control what their kids can access on their accounts, multiple people in the same house won't be able to share games on the service until later on. Doronichev added, but it's a high priority feature we're planning to launch early next year. Not only are they full priced at $60 despite how old they are, and not only do you get less for that $60 on Stadia, only access to games rather than something resembling ownership. It also turns out when you get one game, you can't just share that with your family members. You have to buy, I guess, one game per individual because the family sharing feature won't be available at launch. This offer just gets worse and worse, ladies and gentlemen. The next unavailable feature at launch is Buddy Passes. Quote, Founders Editions of Stadia are supposed to come with Buddy Passes so that people can give a friend a 3-month Stadia subscription to play games with them, but those passes won't actually be sent out until weeks after launch. So that's one of the major features of pre-ordering Stadia is getting this Buddy Pass. That's been nullified, or that's been delayed, I should say. Barry Lee, who works at Stadia, said this: you'll get your Buddy Pass about 2 weeks after you receive your bundle. So I guess it's not super long after launch. There's actually a specific window for this. But your product launches on November 19th, and just looking so unprepared, delaying features that were promised at launch. These are not indicators that inspire confidence for customers who, again, are already pretty skeptical. And finally, the Stadia controller apparently won't be available to at least some people. It reads right here, everyone who pre-ordered Stadia will get their codes to sign on to the service starting November 19th and will be able to play on their phones or Chrome desktop browser with a keyboard and mouse. So that these are essentially the only devices available, and I believe even for phones that's only limited to Pixel devices. And then when it comes to the Chromecast, I pointed out before, only the ones that Google is shipping with Stadia will have the updated firmware. Just it all defeats the purpose of what Stadia is trying to do, of being able to connect to games across all devices, anywhere, on the go. All of that's null and void at launch. The Kotaku article continues, however, the packages containing the controllers and Chromecasts will have staggered shipping sent out in the order pre-orders were received. Okay, so that would explain this. I placed my order for Google Stadia Founders Edition on June 6, 2019, and the delivery date is set for between November 25th and 26th. Which is a couple days after the initial November 19th launch. And yes, I did order a Stadia, and I'm gonna keep the pre-order on simply because I want to do coverage of this, just see how well it works and report back to you guys. But right now, if I were just an average Joe, an average gamer, and saw what Stadia is offering at launch, I would stay as far away from this as humanly possible, because this just looks like a waste of money and time right now. And then Kotaku added, another person commenting on the AMA said they currently had an estimated ship date of late November to early December. When this sort of unpredictability was highlighted, Doronichev chimed in with, quote, moving atoms is a bit more complicated and less predictable than moving bits, so the actual delivery date will depend on the mail truck, traffic lights, etc. Suffice to say that reactions to all this recent news has been pretty negative. A lot of people were already pretty on the fence about Stadia. Now they're really like, nope, this is not for me. I guess the big question that a lot of people are wondering is, who is Stadia for? For casual consumers, I mean, Stadia is not going to do much for them. The games are full priced. A lot of the games are hardcore games. And then for hardcore gamers, they've already got better services. They're the ones who buy the hardware, who don't mind buying the hardware, and who value, owning these games or having, the digital versions of these games or the physical versions of these games tangibly in their consoles or in their hands. These people are not going to care about Stadia. It's just Stadia is stuck in the middle and appeals to no one, really. There's this comment that highlighted this perfectly by Randy Randerson, and this statement right here aptly represents my general take on Stadia as a whole. This reads, so, I know it's cliche at this point to rag on Stadia, but seriously, what tiny sliver of a demographic is this for at this point? People who want to play a tiny number of AAA games, probably at full price, many years after release and much cheaper elsewhere, but not enough to have purchased a console or PC yet, who also have the rare lightning-fast internet and no data cap? For the same subscription cost, you could sign up for PlayStation Now, which has a much larger catalog that don't require separate purchases, including some fantastic exclusives, has had a few years to work out the kinks and is apparently much better than it used to be, can also stream directly to PC, only requires a cheap PS4 controller instead of an expensive Stadia controller, etc. Or for $20 a month, you can sign up for that Xbox All Access plan, which leases you the console and includes Xbox Game Pass, which is also a much more feature-rich and logical service than Stadia, and you'll own that console after 2 years. Am I missing something? You are not. This is it. This is a pretty basic summary of why Stadia is, I think, with the current business model it's going for, going to fail. I don't know how this is going to pan out over time, whether Google will change its mind about the business model, whether the technical elements of this ambitious platform will prove effective, and whether over time Google will add enough compelling features that will make people more interested in the service, and most important of all, whether Stadia will have the games to back up the platform that are not months or weeks old titles, or not games that are already coming out on other better platforms and services. So I'm not going to say that Stadia is doomed from the outset. I am going to say it is going to have a really awful train wreck of a launch. And we have seen platforms and consoles recover from rough launches. I don't know if Stadia will be one of those, but it's certainly not good to have a rough launch. If you can kick off running, that's the most ideal situation, and that goes doubly true for Stadia, a platform that hasn't proven itself. With brand names like PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo, at the very least, there are those brand names to act as a cushion for rough launches. With Stadia, nobody's heard of Stadia. This is a completely new venture on Google's part, with a lot of skepticism surrounding it. They don't have that cushion. They have to prove from the starting line that they are serious competitors. But seeing the piss-poor lineup of games and seeing how many features are missing, Google they're half-assing this. They should have waited another year to really get everything together, to really launch with a bang. This sort of trickling in is not going to do this service any good. We will have to wait and see how Stadia pans out. I'll be getting my hands on it and reporting back, and I'm sure plenty of other outlets will have their own takes on this when Stadia launches on November 19th. I'm sure the media outlets are going to get their Stadia orders or their Stadia review units on time. So I guess we'll have those to look forward to. And we'll see what the impressions say. But until then, let me know in the comments below what your take is on Stadia's missing features and its current library of launch titles. Are you interested in this? What do you think prospects look like for Stadia? Drop a comment below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.